Hi, good evening. Welcome once again to the Gildarie Freddie Show, right here being streamed live on the Guyanese Critic platform. You could also get us on YouTube. I want to say Happy Emancipation Day to all across Guyana or wherever you are joining us from. It has taken significance in recent years. People, they're becoming much more aware of whether it's Arrival Day, whether it's Emancipation Day. We are seeing people paying attention more and being a little more proud of our culture and whatever it is that defines us. I have with me here tonight, of course, my co-host, Freddie Kissoon. I want to say good night to you, sir. I came prepared for you, but I was told that I have to tone it down a little. The colors were not appropriate, as you could see, ladies and gentlemen, the shirt. I came prepared for Freddie Kissoon. And of course, in the midst of us is a special guest. I'd say special because he burst into or onto the scene in 2020 during that elections fiasco in front of Ashman's building. And Timothy Jonas, who did not know Timothy Jonas, knew him then. He took on all and sundry journalists. You would have seen journalists, you would have seen politicians, of course, the then government, and he made his feelings known. In he did not hold the punches back. Of course, today happens to be August the 1st. Tomorrow is going to be August the 2nd. And you would know 2 years ago, it is that Irfan Ali was sworn in as the president of Guyana. And tomorrow marks 2 years in office for the PPP government. I want to say welcome to you, Mr. Jonas. And we get right down into things.
Thank you very
How
much.
has the PPP done, Mr. Jonas, in
Well,
2 years?
a hard question right up front. Okay. We have a young and energetic president, and he doesn't seem to sleep. He is all over doing everything that he thinks will please his supporters, and I think he is rallying his supporters around him. Unfortunately, his supporters are only half of the country, and he has another 3 years to try to rally the other half around him. I believe that personally he has the best intentions. I believe that he is trying his best to persuade voters on both sides of the divide that the One Guyana project that is touted and that we hear all over the place is one that will be for the benefit of everyone. He has not persuaded half of the country, and that is something that he needs to work on by acts and deeds rather than just by talking about it.
Thank you very much, Freddie. Before I hand it over to you, I deliberately left out who Mr. Timothy Jonas is. And the reason for that, I wanted Freddie to do it, but I want to ask Timothy and throw him off balance. Timothy is no stranger to the legal world. In fact, he's a senior counsel. He is the chairman of New and United Guyana. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Freddie, I'm going to jump straight into
Timothy,
you because you're going to have some
I
questions.
don't know if you know, but the only time the three of us ever met was in 2020, and you announced to our viewers that I taught you 99 years ago, Chuji. Make that 199. But,
It was a long
but you
time
still
ago.
remember the philosophy Aristotle, Plato, and you carry them in your life and in your politics, and of course in law. I would think you still carry those philosophers with you that you learned 99 or 199 years ago. So here's my question. Gildarie said you catapulted yourself into the eyes of the Guyanese people in 2020, March 2020. That is a correct description, because in monitoring social media and in the press, you occupied a similar space, a similar physical presence to the PPP leaders and Leonard Schumann. I mean, if anyone could pinpoint somebody who was there giving statements to the press, saying things, it were the PPP leaders, Schumann and yourself. Timothy, I wonder if you haven't come onto the scene too late, in the sense that you see Anuk seen to want to situate itself in the landscape or the horizon that the AFC once had. I think I see the similarity. But I'm wondering if the damage that the AFC has done to third party credibility, to credible faces like you, to credible political activism of yours, if that damage is so enormous that it's going to take some time.
That's a good question. The starting point for ANOG was because of the failures of the AFC while they were in government with the APNO. Now, to answer your question about AFC, you're right. AFC started out and got immediate traction and immediate support because at the time that they started, we had had nearly 2 decades of PPP rule. We had seen growing corruption, but we still had the memory of PNC excesses before 1992. Now, we know Guyana. Guyana vote along ethnic lines. But there is a small core in Guyana of people who have rejected the corruption and have rejected the ethnic voting. And they need a voice, they need a space. The reason AFC got immediate traction is because AFC was the only entity that immediately provided that space. So the AFC concept, the AFC policy, the AFC religion was a rejection of ethnic voting, a celebration of societal norms, societal values, and a wish to remove the winner-take-all frustration of half of the country who loses when we vote along ethnic lines. There was an immediate space available to AFC. And at the first election, they got a number of seats because of that space. I was part of that. I was there from day one with AFC when Ramjatan told me that they were thinking of starting this party. I immediately supported, threw in my help, did what I could in the background to help with paperwork and that kind of thing, gave my support. I'm no politician. I don't like politics. I'm too busy. I do my own thing. But so I did not want to be actively on a front line of AFC. But I was so happy that the country could breathe because there's an opportunity for a third space now that I did what I could. The mistake that I personally made was in not recognizing when AFC won the swing vote in Parliament in 2011 that they did nothing with it. AFC had the power in 2011 when they controlled Parliament with the opposition, with the large opposition, to start implementing some laws, start proposing some new legislation in Parliament that would create an inclusive system that both sides of the fence would feel that they had some kind of representation in the decision-making process. AFC did nothing at all. There is not a single meaningful piece of legislation in that 5-year period, 2011 to 2015, that AFC can point to say, look what we did to bring the opposition in so that they were in the decision-making space, in the boardroom with the government, and could make decisions. Now, that failing, it didn't register in my mind. And maybe that's a mistake I made. But what we saw with the AFC after 2015 is that they didn't have, the few of them who saw the wrongdoing didn't have the backbone to draw the line in the sand to say the excesses of APNU when in government are too much, we're not tolerating it. A lot of them immediately became indiscernible from APNU. They immediately did an animal farm and became identical to the APNU people. So that what I realized is that this religion, this concept of AFC that had galvanized 30,000 voters was at the bottom, at the support. But the leaders of the AFC had no knowledge, no connection, no empathy to that underlying concept. They didn't understand what they were selling. So they were selling an idea that is an absolutely wonderful idea, that it provides a voice for the people who want to do away with ethnic voting. and yet they were subsumed in the same ethnic divide. So they didn't recognize in themselves what they should have been about. And that failing manifested itself between 2015 and 2020, and then got even worse in elections when we saw the mess that happened. Here's the thing. If we say, look what AFC did, how can we trust a third party? It makes sense. But the answer to that is, let's not have a third party. And let's have APNU and PPP as the only contenders for Guyana going forward. And have we solved our problem? There has got to be a space for the people like you, who I know didn't support both sides, to give voice to their support, to say, let us move away from what traditionally is hurting us. So this game is not about winning, it's not about spotlight. This game is about providing a space, providing a forum, a platform, where the people who recognize the harm in this ethnic politics that we got can reject it and say, here's where I'm landing, here is where I'm putting my support. And hopefully one day there can be enough of us that there is that swing vote in Parliament that we can force, we can leverage an inclusive system using the parliamentary rules.
Yeah, thank you very much. Tim, a question here, because I always wondered if the tragedy of the 2020 election did not do permanent damage on what I would not only the opposition, but the PNC, APNU, AFC. Do we have an opposition in Guyana at the moment, Tim?
Have we ever had an opposition? It's easy to blame the opposition now. Norton has my sympathy. Norton has inherited a party that is in tatters. The party had no face left after the elections because they tried to steal the elections and they failed in an embarrassing way. And Norton, who is, haven't spoken to him many times, once or twice, but he is obviously a bright man, has inherited a situation where he knows that demographically in Guyana, he is not going to win a fair election if he just follows the normal course. And more so, he's not going to win it because his predecessors in the party managed to polarize the population in a way that they have not been polarized since the 1980s. Now, we had a renaissance, we had an enlightening just before 2015 when people were willing to vote across the divide. That has disappeared. The people are polarized again. So what Mr. Norton has inherited is something that he is going to have to somehow piece together like a jigsaw puzzle. But I believe, and I suspect he knows as well, that given the polarization that has taken place because of what happened in 2020, APNU more than likely faces another 28 years in the wilderness, just like the devastation that Burnham caused in the 80s put them in the wilderness between 1992 and 2015.
Something happened before Freddie, you jump in there. Something happened as a spin-off from that today. The president went to New Amsterdam and he was greeting the people there, and the opposition leader Aubrey Norton was there, and there was a lady when the president stretched out her hand. He did not shake the president's hand, but he bowed. The lady that was standing there, I presume, I didn't get to see who it was, but she did not shake the president's hand, and it looks as if she refused. Now, my question to you: the office of the president, the office of the government, I believe it's sacred. This is my personal belief. We could protest in different ways. Are the people right, or do they have a right to do what they did, or should we have respected the thing and protest in another way?
I share your view. You have to respect the office. I didn't see what happened. I heard about it. I saw Demerara Waves. I'm sorry to mention your competition, talking something about it online. The thing is, what is APNU to do? From the time PPP got into office in August last 2020, APNU has said they are an installed regime. They are installed because the Americans put them there, because they cheated, because they had stuffed ballot boxes along the East Coast. All of these reasons that everybody knows are false, are not true. But having said that, it is very difficult for APNU to look at their supporters and say, well, we're retreating from that position and we're acknowledging that the government is properly elected. So you are right. As long as APNU hold to the dishonest line that the elections were unfair, then they cannot look at their supporters in the face and reach out to a government that they continue to maintain is installed. So we have to look at how APNU is going to move forward. If they're not going to win a fair election, and if, as we have seen, the PPP government does not intend to conduct governance in an inclusive way to bring them in, because we've heard statements from the PPP side, why do we need to talk to these people if they're not even recognizing us or acknowledging us? And we have seen in practice how the awards of contracts has been going on, how the governance of the country has been taking shape. We've already seen a favoritism and an exclusion of one side of the country. So if you take those two together, the supporters of one side feel excluded. Their leaders are telling them that the government cheated and is an installed government. What is the way forward? What is the strategy for APNU to ensure that before 28 years pass, they have some say? What are they going to do? They can't win a fair election because they've polarized the people. They can't step back from the position about an installed government. And if they soften the tone, they lose the opportunity to lead a fight to get constitutional reform through talking about social unrest, talking about forcing these people to the table, using speeches, using dialogue that fall just short of the incendiary, but that to me the message is clear. That is the way forward.
But Timothy, there's an ethnic reality that I don't think APNU is facing. The ethnic reality is that you cannot win a vote, you cannot win an election through the demographic reality. None of the two major races have even 40%. Why, even if they don't want to acknowledge that the election was free and fair, there's also another suicidal dimension to it. When you look at the dépouillement, when you look at the rhetoric demagoguery of APNU and WPA, there's always this overt reliance on ethnic vocabulary. I have not seen a PPP leader, any type, first at the top of the hierarchy, second tier, they emphasize that Indian people must have this, Indian people come from this background. You cannot miss the requiem, the sermon, anytime it happened last night in Buxton. Black this, black that, black. What happened to the PNC's perspective of multiracial politics? You had some of that with Burnham, you had some of that with Hoyt. Why is this why is this program just jettisoned and everything is black people? Black people must have this. Black people have been this. Why not Guyanese must have this? Why not there must be equality for all people? We think they're Indian masses who are being abandoned by the... Why this emphasis, this relentless emphasis on ethnicity whenever the APNU and the WPA and some others in AFC open their mouth? It's self-defeating.
You know, here's the thing. The racial voting that takes place in Guyana is not one-sided. It's on both sides. The absolute loyalty on ethnic lines and on no other ground in Guyana is on both sides. So I don't think that we can just isolate the discussion to say, why are the speeches looking this way? Unless we look at the wider picture to say, why is it that Guyanese vote along ethnic lines? And I've come
That's
to
not true. We'll come back to that.
You don't
That-
think Guyanese vote along ethnic lines?
They did not in recent times, and I think they.
Well, Eddie, Freddie, I'm sorry. I have to disagree
Well,
with
well,
you because
well, I will
sat
explain
down.
why. I will explain
Let
why.
me tell you my experience because I sat down during the counting of votes, village by village. And you know in Guyana, villages are identified ethnically. You go in a village, you know if it's an Afro village or an Indo village. And when you count in the villages, PPP will get 900, APNU will get 3. You count in another village, APNU will get 900, PPP will get 3. No one can tell me that in Guyana we are not voting along
I am
ethnic
telling
lines.
you. I am telling
Well,
you
I
that.
told
But
you my
let me
experience. Tell me
let
where
me
you counted.
explain. Let me explain that. You now have the opportunity. You now, ANOG, now have the opportunity to carry multiracial voting in a direction that it once had. Given the demography, given the ethnic demography in 2011, the PPP should not have lost the election. In 2011, Berbice defected from the PPP. And that multi-ethnic rejection or diminution of the PPP was not built upon after 2015. In 2015, the PPP lost again. My point is, they reached a stage in the dialectics of Guyana where there was an eating in to ethnic politics. In fact, Georgetown in the 2011 election, there was a low percentage in 2011 in Georgetown. That's because Africans were becoming disenchanted. Now, I need to point out to you, in the 2020 election, there was a decrease in African turnout. The problem is why we return to ethnic voting in 2020 is because the PNC and the AFC did not maintain that rhapsody of multiracial voting that began in 2011. The point is that my objection, my vehement, acidic, torrential objection to Amanza Walton Desir theory that Indians are led by the PPP and that blacks are more open to other theories. My rejection of that is that Indians voted against the PPP in 2011 and 2015. I conclude by saying maybe the Indians went back to the PPP after they felt that their multiracial direction was frowned upon between 2015 and 2020.
But Freddie, you've just gone full circle in our argument and landed back where we started.
But
Let me tell you why I'm saying this. I said we're voting along ethnic lines, and you disagreed. And I gave you the examples that in the villages, when you're at the count, you will see 99 voted PNC, 3
No,
voted
you didn't
PPP.
contextualize that. You didn't contextualize
And in the next
it.
village, you would see 99 voted PPP and 3 vote PNC. I said I gave exactly that example, and I used that as the
That one
example
you're
to
talking
support. Let
about.
me finish, please. I used that as the example as to why I'm saying we are voting along ethnic lines, which you disagreed with. So I asked you why you disagreed. And what you did
Yeah.
is you went back to 2011
And
to show
2015.
that there was that the Berbetians defected from the PPP, the traditional PPP strongholds. But we started out this conversation by saying that there was a renaissance, there was an enlightening after, between 2011 going into 2015, there was an enlightening when more and more people had forgotten the hardships under Burnham and were disaffected by the corruption with PPP. And there was a time when people were more willing to cross the line, but the 2020 experience has radicalized and polarized everyone again. We just had that conversation.
No, you had
Did
it.
we just have
No,
that
no, you
conversation?
had it without context.
How is that without context?
The multiracial platform of 2011,
This is your-
2015
hold on, if I
was
understood
about
it,
no,
There
no,
was no such
no,
thing
no.
as a multiracial platform.
No, no,
except
no,
for
no,
the
no,
AFC.
no, no.
Let me tell you.
Well,
Let's
then
look
that
at the
dented
numbers.
ethnic voting.
Look at the numbers.
No,
please.
no, 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 no.
You don't want to look at the
Timothy.
numbers?
No, Timothy.
Why
You're
you say no? You
contradicting
don't want to look at the
yourself.
numbers?
No, no.
Allow me
No,
to
no,
look at the numbers.
go on, go on.
Go on, Tim.
In 2011, PPP won by 1 seat. 5,000 votes you're talking about, right? In 2015, PPP lost by 1 seat. In 2020, PPP won by 1 seat. You are telling me that that little core of maybe 10,000, 15,000 voters out of 400,000 represents not voting along ethnic lines? That's what you're trying to say?
No, I'm
I am
not saying that. I'm saying
there
something
needs
slightly
to be
different.
a voice. There needs to be a voice for a third party to represent those people who reject the ethnic voting. And at the height of AFC, at the height of the renaissance that we're talking about, when people were willing to cross the lines, when people were feeling enlightened and feeling empowered because they had more confidence in the democracy, AFC was still getting less than 50,000 votes.
No, but you see,
There is a small
No.
core that is not voting along ethnic
whether
lines,
it is
my
small
friend.
core or not,
Therefore,
it's
my
not ethnic
conclusion-
determinism.
What is this? Therefore, my conclusion is that out of those 400,000 voters, 350, at the best we've done, 350 continue to vote how they voted.
No, but you have to contextualize. We're gonna end up arguing this all the time. I think 2011 was a watershed period, even though you call it small. But Gildarie,
Thank
How
you
many
very
seats
much.
did AFC have?
I don't know who won that argument, but ethnic voted. Interesting topic. Issue of economic policies, Mr. Jonas. We would have seen early or in the last budget, we went to the oil money and we drew down on that. I think the government want to make sure that it spends it. At least that's what I understood. That they want to spend it and let the people be able to benefit from that oil money now and not later on. The idea also is to let us drill, let us explore, let us try to exploit whatever resources are out there so we could be able to benefit from that. We would have seen also a number of developments where the government, when they were flooding, they would have given out disbursements to the people. I think as early as tomorrow, there's supposed to be cash grants to students. Now, I know that you would have made statements, or your party, ANOG, would have made statements with regards to the way that the government is spending, and there has been some concerns. Is it something that ANOG had some concerns about? And if so, what are some of the recommendations that you would make?
If you put the cat with the milk and there's nobody to watch, the cat will drink all the milk. The only way that all of Guyana, both sides, can be satisfied as to the expenditure of this free money that we're getting from oil is for the opposition to have members sitting in the decision-making process, monitoring and seeing when the money is taken out of the New York account, monitoring and seeing how the contracts are awarded, who they're awarded to, what the criteria are for the award of the contracts, and ensuring that it is done properly and that their supporters get an equal bite of the cherry. The structure now of the petroleum legislation does not permit that. The commission is appointed by the president. The money can be taken out with no input, no say by the opposition, and it can be put into the consolidated fund, which is controlled by parliament, which is controlled by government. So there is a large reserve of money available out there. We've seen it being spent, we've seen a spending spree going on, and unless that spending spree takes place under the watch of both sides, we will have a problem. Now, we are aware in Guyana that there is deep suspicion in the award of contracts. It's all well and good for a minister to go to some village and stand up on a road and say this road was built courtesy of PPP, or another minister to say we're giving out this money because we care. But every single road you see, every single bridge you see, every single new magistrate's court that is built, or new police station that is built, or a new highway that is built, involves the award of a contract for millions and millions of dollars. And unless there is proper oversight and scrutiny of how that contract is awarded, we have a problem. Now, I've discussed this in another forum, but I'm going to say it over and over because when people hear about the award of contracts, often people don't understand the underlying system and how it works. When you want to bid for a contract, government decides they're building a road, and you want to bid for this contract, the government invites people to come and bid. Now, they're what you call pre-qualifying conditions. So, you pre-qualify if you can show certain ingredients. You got people already employed by you that are expert and know to build roads. You own your own equipment to build the road. You got some asphalt plant or some shop that you can produce the material and store the material to build the road. You have experience in building the road. If you can show all of these criteria, then you pre-qualify. But each of these criteria, you own the equipment, you got a shop, you got access to the asphalt plant, you have expertise, you have personnel. Each of those things will be given points to establish how qualified you are. So, I put in my bid. And the bid goes to Freddie, who is the man in the ministry responsible for receiving all of these bids. The first thing he's going to look for is the amount that I've bid, because his engineer has already looked at the road and told him this road is going to cost a fair price is $100. There is nothing to stop Freddie from saying to his friend, yo, go and bid $101. So immediately the friend has an advantage in the amount he has bid. Then the friend might say, hey, I don't have much experience in this. So Freddie can say, all right, that particular criterion about experience, we will give it less points. We'll give you more points because I know you got people working for you and I know you own the equipment. So we'll give you more points so that you look better on the paper in terms of your pre-qualification.
Hypothetically, or you
Of course I'm speaking hypothetically, but this I'm telling you how the system works.
Right. Okay.
What I'm telling you is that if there are possible loopholes in a system, then chances are those loopholes can be used. So our objective is not to point fingers to say someone is stealing. Our objective is to say if this is the system and the system is flawed and the system has loopholes which can be exploited dishonestly, then we are calling on you to fix the loopholes, fix the system, so that nobody can criticize and everybody can see this thing is done transparently, and therefore we're all satisfied in the award of the contract. If you do not have that, and if only one side is awarding the contracts, receiving the bids, deciding who wins, and nobody has oversight, nobody has scrutiny, then you will always have suspicion and you will always have the underdog, the people in the opposition, shouting accusations which cannot be proved, but it doesn't look good. You need the opposition present and there when the decisions are being made.
Timothy,
I want to ask a follow-up before
I
you
have
do
heard you on, I have heard you, and many, I've heard you on GlobeSpan, and I know this is one of the recurrent theme in your deliveries, and the Starbook News editorial is on a runaway train with this. There must be inclusiveness. The opposition must have a say. I don't have a problem with that. But as someone who studied political theory and someone who looks at the world outside there, I want to see a blueprint of, I want to see a blueprint from you, from the Starbook News ownership, where you have a system of competitive election for a government. And when it's over, there is a curtailment of power, and there are reaches assigned to the opposition whereby there is some form of break on the totality of power. I haven't seen it in Modi. He has a majority, and there are claims that he is going in frightening anti-Muslim right-wing directions that has a Trumpian complexion to it. No one in their crazy mind would say India doesn't have a democratic
Let me give you two
parliament
examples
system.
because you're
Boris
absolutely
Johnson
right.
has a 70.
Okay, you're absolutely right. You want a blueprint, and you're right, because it's well and easy to talk airy-fairy concepts, but unless you can condescend to particulars to say this is what we propose, then you're really wasting time and you're just sounding good and you're preaching to, people who may not understand but don't really care. So let's give two examples about blueprints. I just gave you an example of a system of bidding. If all the bids go to you in the ministry and the evaluation
But
people...
you said that's hypothetical.
No, that is the system. I said that's the system.
You're talking about the system.
Yes,
the system.
this is what we're talking about, the system.
And that's the way, and that system has these manifestations of...
I'm showing you a way to fix the system, to plug the loopholes. So, if the contracts, the bids go to you, you're the one who receives them. and you have to send them to your engineer to evaluate. Yeah? So between you and your engineer, y'all are awarding these contracts. Y'all are recommending that this is the best contract. A solution to that is that there should be 3 of you and 6 engineers appointed by the government with the agreement of the opposition, and every single contract that comes in rotates 1, 2, 3. And between the 3 of you, among the 3 of you, as a contract comes in, it goes to Freddie, next one goes to George, next one goes to Hing. Yeah? So that nobody knows, because it's automatic, nobody knows that this particular contract for Brickdam Road going to Freddie. Then when Freddie receives this, and he's got to send it to his engineer to evaluate, the engineers receive them by rotation. You can't choose which engineer. So it goes to an engineer by rotation. That means that you can't control the engineer who makes the recommendation, makes it back to you. But you don't even know if you're getting the breakdown contract to send to an engineer in the first place. So by that rotation, you create a system where when the government says we go in and rebuild St. George's High School, Freddie does not know if that contract, if those bids are going to come to him. They could go to 2 other people. And in any event, if it goes to Freddie, Freddie can't control which engineer it goes to, who evaluates the bid, because it goes on rotation.
Okay, that's
so it makes it more difficult, and it plugs systemically. It plugs a hole.
And
let me give you another example.
And you find elected democracies around the world. You have that system?
Man, Freddie, you asked for a blueprint. Now you want comparisons, but I'm giving you examples. Let me give you another example, please. We are aware of government folk and government friends receiving land from Central Housing and Planning over the years. We are aware of that.
Yeah.
How does that happen? Central Housing and Planning is an organization. It's a statutory body. It has a board appointed by the minister, who himself has been appointed by the president. And that board makes decisions that we go in and develop this piece of land, or we go in and fix this piece of land. Now, every single private company you know about that does rewards, when you buy at Shell gas station every now and then, they tell you they got something, you sign your name and you put it in the box and you can win a prize. Everybody knows an employee of Shell gas station can't win the prize. He's not eligible. The employees are told it will look bad if an employee of Shell gas station wins the prize. And yet, we have Central Housing and Planning giving the prize to government folk. So let's deal with that. The solution, the blueprint, is that board of 7 people on Central Housing and Planning who employ the general manager. That board, let Mr. Norton pick 3 of them, and let President Ali pick 3 of them, and let a third party pick 1. So if that board of 7, when they decide we are employing this person as a general manager, they do it by majority. And you can bet your bottom dollar that after they finish quarreling, the person that they employ as a general manager will be a professional. More than that, the person they employ as a general manager, once he or she does his job, can't be afraid of the board, because for that board to fire him, 4 got to agree to fire him. So PPP alone can't fire him. APNO alone can't fire him. And therefore, he has the luxury of doing his or her job properly, knowing that if he does it, 4 people on that board will support him. So you won't have a situation where you see how many dismissals happening of the general manager at Chronicle because the government didn't like the tone. You won't have that. Because if Chronicle is run by a board, 3 appointed by Mr. Norton, 3 appointed by President Ali, and 1 appointed by a third group, Chronicle could become a professional newspaper rather than the rag it is. Central Housing would never have been given away land to government friends and family. GPL would be run in a way that the award of contracts would be straight. Guyana, that had so much scandal in the 5 years, would have been run properly. 3 Guyana board appointed by Mr. Norton, 3 appointed by President Ali, 1 in the middle. It is such a simple solution, and it can be done by a swing vote in Parliament. AFC could have done it across the board. EPA, GEA that awards oil import, petroleum import licenses, GEA. Do you remember how many people got import licenses? It wouldn't have happened if you had 3 and 3 and 1, because there would have been transparency, and if there was wrongdoing, there would have been immediate scrutiny, and the people who felt aggrieved would be going run into the public because it would all be in the open.
Timothy, I
Do you
don't
agree
have
with
a
the
problem.
blueprint?
I don't want to.
You like the blueprint or not, Freddie?
No, but Freddie,
The blueprint,
must-
is,
the
the
blueprint.
blueprint, to my mind, is one, it's not universal, but the question that should be asked, and let Gildarie come in, the question should be asked is, where does that leave the jurisdiction of elected power? People compete for governments so they can run governments based on their manifesto. I don't have a problem with that blueprint you're talking about. But that blueprint sounds very idealistic, and it encroaches on a party that spent 1 year in the trenches, win an election, and has to share power with an opposition that may very well be recalcitrant and seek to
No, but what
undermine
you
it.
said
But
is-
I don't want to.
If we follow your line of thinking,
Yes.
Freddie,
No.
if we follow your line of thinking,
No, my line of
Then
thinking
let
is
us-
theoretical.
yeah, let's
My
follow
line-
your theoretical line of thinking, Freddie. If we follow it, then let us leave PPP and let us leave APNU to conduct their fight.
No.
And let the winner get the government and all the power, and to hell with the loser, because the loser will be out in the desert for the next 5 years. And let us continue doing what we have been doing for 60 years.
No, I don't have a problem with.
As we just said.
No, I don't have a problem with
And let me say
exposing
further,
corruption.
every example I just gave doesn't have anything to do with government. Central housing is created by Parliament. Parliament, under the Westminster system that I learned from you, should be independent of government because we have 3 independent branches of government. So if Parliament says it is in the interest of this nation to have a central housing and planning association that is dedicated to provide land, provide housing, provide drainage for the poor, if Parliament says this, then why are you allowing the executive to step in to decide that they're giving land to themselves?
Before Gildarie comes, I want to ask you something. You think the United States has a democratic system?
Why are we going all the way
No,
to the
I
United
want.
States?
You will see the relevance. You think we have the separation? You think there's a separation of powers in the U.S.?
You know, I'm going to answer your question, and I'm going to answer it honestly. The U.S. is so large, almost like China, that no...
It's not as large as China.
I said almost like
Yeah.
China. Why, Freddie, why are you
Okay,
nitpicking,
okay.
man? Why are you nitpicking on things like that?
Okay.
The US
It's the
let me
U.S. The
finish.
U.S. has the separation of power.
The U.S. is so large
Yeah.
that it is impossible for any one person like me with my poor little brain trying to holistically understand how each twist and turn works so that I can say to you that everything is going smoothly. There is a huge amount of corruption in the U.S., but the amount of corruption as a percentage of the total revenue turnover is much smaller, I am certain, and I'm saying this without any empirical knowledge.
I have to
is much
remind you, the
smaller.
question is there the separation of power in the U.S.?
Okay.
I know you're gone. Anything.
The U.S. has a system that they have Congress, they got Senate. The,
And
se-
judiciary as us.
the senators are
And judiciary, the separation of power is 3 branches.
right. Well, we go into the judiciary. They have Senate and they have Congress. Now, those are the lawmaking bodies. They are each peopled by representatives from each of the states. They do their job. The judiciary at the bottom level, the county judges, as I understand it, are often appointed, voted for by the people in the counties. At the higher level, they are nominated by the president. This is at the Supreme Court level, and are approved by Congress. So it works. And theoretically, there is a separation.
How you mean theoretically? So how you mean it works?
Well,
It
let me
could
tell you.
only work. It could only work if the president's party has a majority. And when the president's party has a majority, you end up with Supreme Judges nominees that people say are selected because they're liberal and not conservative.
In that case,
But-
you're saying it
but-
doesn't work if the president has the majority.
It does. It works. The separation of power doesn't work whether you have a majority or not, because judges are appointed based on the president's view of their ideology.
Only
But
the Supreme
Timothy,
Court, only at the
Tim-
Supreme Court.
Timothy-
But what you just said, if the
No.
president's, if the Republican Party, if the president's Republican and his party controls the Senate,
yeah,
then he's in a good position because chances are the judge that he appoints will be approved.
But
Correct?
also,
Correct? Please,
Yeah.
let me finish. Let me land. So in Guyana, where we have a much simpler system with 700,000 people here, and we have one parliament, not two houses, not two legislative houses, and we have one president, and that president controls the parliament, it doesn't work.
No, but you forget.
I'm following your
But you
logic.
no. There's another part of my logic that you forgot.
Please
If
tell
the
me.
president doesn't control the Senate, he can't get his nominee in the judiciary in the Supreme Court.
Perfect system.
Therefore, the opposition determines who gets on the Supreme
Good
Court.
system.
That, to my mind, cannot be the separation of power. Where there's a presidential majority in the Senate or an opposition in the Senate, the separation of power is encroached upon because politics is the criterion in which judiciary members are selected. This has gone on too long.
I quite enjoy the sword friends between two good minds here, ladies and gentlemen. I want to ask you, I must make a point here, that what you were talking about there, about how bids and tenders are evaluated, I was told, and I have to confirm this back, that there is indeed a system at the National Procurement and Tender Board in which the evaluators don't know what they're getting. It's being done on a rotation. I was told that they had implemented it because I had raised that issue as to whether it is working. Because if you don't know what you're getting to evaluate at the end of the day. So here was a couple of things before we move on. I want to ask you a question there. If a minister appoints somebody who's going to be an evaluator, that evaluator falls under that ministry. My question, and I don't think we need to answer it, could that evaluator be independent? That's the first thing. The second thing is, I understand, and this is going to be alarming. I'm going to raise this issue here with NPTAP's chairman, Mr. Balgobin, as to whether the evaluators are actually holding meetings. I understand they're supposed to meet with every contract, 3 of them or 4 of them from the different places, and go through it one by one. I understand one man take off all the thing. That's what I was told. I could be wrong. The person could be wrong, but they said, please investigate it, Mr. Gildarie. That they set a long ticket and then send it to the other people and said, please sign off on this. There's so many contractors out there that things are slipping. It may be that NPTAP is not aware of it, because when that recommendation of the tender is given, that I want Gildarie's company to be there, the chairman for the tender board would not know that they never met. The minutes of the meeting is thing. So it could also be a scenario in which all the evaluators are holding one hand. But hold on, I just wanted to make a point.
You know, there's a theoretical weakness in his presentation.
What's that?
Remember, 3 opposition. You have 3 opposition. The opposition must be present on these boards. What happens?
You're talking about 2 different things, you know.
No, I'm talking about your thing, man.
Because
No, I'm not talking about his thing.
All right.
I'm talking about your thing, where you feel transparency, accountability.
You know what thing just happened? I think that Freddie just got a brainwave, so he wants to go back to retard.
No.
No.
All right.
I was saying,
Jump away from what
why
you
the 3 opposition members? Because we have seen it in GCOM. GCOM is a disaster, but it has 3 opposition.
We're talking something.
History
Freddie,
opposition people. I'm just being provocative here.
You're provoking me then.
History opposition people on these bodies. Why can't they be, because they're in opposition, they create mischief? Anyway, I think I want to make it quite clear. No one in this country should tolerate corruption, and there are talks about that in all kinds of sectors, and they should be investigated. We went off track because I think we have a disagreement on blueprint for democracy.
And that's okay. The discussion is all about that.
The thing with
Mr.
corruption is that there has to be transparency in what is done. And if there's no transparency, then there is scope for corruption. And
We have
do
to
not
have
be
a
transparent.
discussion on coming back to NPTAB, because there's indeed, according to the government, according to the systems that's in place, there's NPTAB, which is a National Procurement Board. There's a Procurement Commission. I think Pauline Chase is a chairperson. I think
So I heard.
Yes. And there are some other levels in which you could basically, and then of course there's a cabinet which does not give an objection, but there's something else that is a noted, I think it is. I don't think they have changed. So there's some levels there. As to whether it's working, I think we need to have a conversation with that. My question to you as we wind down, we just got about 6, 7 minutes more, Mr. Jonas. Corruption in Guyana. Is it a myth, or has Irfan Ali and his government has it under control?
Well, we're discussing systems that clearly are flawed. As long as the system is flawed, it's not under control. You're dealing with humans. And if there's free money on the table, a human is going to pick it up. And if the system is porous, so that you can pick it up without getting caught, the temptation is there. Now, we had a discussion the other day online where someone was trying to defend the cash grants, for example. The cash grants is an accounting nightmare, and it is so porous that there is nobody who can put their head on the block to say that this thing is done properly. Let me give you the example. Let's start with the one that is easiest to scrutinize, which is the school children. You have a list of school children at St. George's. I'm using St. George's because it burned down, so those children are now dissipated to different schools. So we know how many children there are. Let's say there are 100 children there. You therefore know that you need $100. If each child is to get $1, you need $100. You put these 100 envelopes in somebody's hand, and I use Freddie, you must go to there, sorry. Put 100 envelopes in Freddie's hand, and you say, go and distribute. So Freddie goes, and he sits down, and 50 parents come, they show their ID, they sign, and he gives them. 50 parents don't turn up. What is to stop Freddie from signing 25 more and returning 25 envelopes plus 75 signatures to the person who handed it to him? Where is Freddie going to get caught? The only way Freddie will get caught is if somewhere publicly the ministry puts up that at St. George's here are 100 names of students, and these are the students who have been paid. So that when young Gildarie looks at that and see he goes to St. George's and he know his daddy never collect no money, but there it is, his daddy's stated to have been paid, and there's a signature, we know something is wrong. That is the only possible way that you can cross-check in accounting terms after you have identified the list of beneficiaries, 100, so you know there's no doubt about the list of beneficiaries, and you know that you've paid $100, and you know that you've collected back.
Timothy, time is going, and there's so many questions we have next. There's one I have to ask.
I know, but I haven't finished. So let me go to the other one.
Because
I want to go to the laughable one now. Fishermen, farmers. Can anybody in this country show me a list of registered fishermen or farmers that when I put these white envelopes in Freddie's hand to go and start paying out, and Freddie got a list, Mr. Gildarie signs as a fisherman, Mr. Gildarie signs as a farmer, that we know these are fishermen and farmers, that we know how many there are? It is an accounting nightmare. And that same porous situation needs to be resolved. And let me jump ahead for Freddie. It can only be resolved by implementing a recognizable, transparent, predictable welfare system where NIS is employed. That if you got unemployment benefits, you go and you register as unemployed and you collect your benefit. So that I know, Timothy Jonas, if I get fired next month, I have been paying NIS all my life, and I can go and say, I've been fired, please pay me my benefit.
We got 2 minutes left, and we got 2 minutes, right?
Yes.
I cannot let you go without this question. The AFC said they're moving away from the PNC in December, and they're going to look for alliances with smaller parties.
I dare them.
Is there any possibility of that?
The AFC is a laughing stock.
Okay,
Freddie.
number 2, you have to select, Anu has to select a parliamentarian next year, right? When that parliamentarian goes into parliament, you know, it's a high standard. You will be setting for that person because you've criticized people in parliament.
Thank you for that. But I believe that when that person goes in there, if he gets in there, because there are a lot of balls in the air, there are a lot of variables. So let us say everything works perfectly and he's in there. Then,
or she.
Or she. Thank you for that correction, because that's a distinct possibility. Then please invite me back on the show after 6 months or a year, and let's discuss what they've done.
Finally, you're the chairman, Mr. Kian Jabu, who's actually in the studio this evening, is the general secretary, and Mr. Ramkaran is the leader.
Mr. Ramkran is the general secretary.
Kian Jabu is what?
I can't remember the designation.
And what? He's in the studio.
Organizing secretary.
Organizing secretary, and you're the chairman. That configuration will change for 2025
Definitely.
because Mr. Ramkaran will.
Well, I hope not. Let me tell you something about Ralph Ramkaran. The man is
You got a couple seconds.
the man is a warrior through and through. And people say when they said he's old, he pointed out Granger's older. He has never complained, he has never slowed down, he has never deviated or wavered. I have enormous respect for that man. The day will come when he says to me, Jonas, I had enough, I gone. And at that stage I will say, thank you, what you have done was magnificent, but I hope that day isn't here yet.
I guess on that note, Timothy, we got to call it George, as they say.
It was a pleasure quarreling with you, Freddie. I haven't done this
We
with you
call
for
everybody.
30
I thought I'm
years.
the only one that had quarreled with Freddie. Freddie believes that his opinion is the only one. You know, this guy is unbelievable. Well, let me throw some figures out there. This is from Minister... Hold on, man. You always keep interrupting.
No, we got-
All right. Minister Priya Manikchand this afternoon put this out here. And this is a nightmare that Timothy is talking about. And maybe we could invite her. You could reach out and let her to tell us how they're doing it for the sake of accountability. We packed 202,550 envelopes of $30,000 each, amounting to $6,076,500 for each and every nursery, primary, and secondary school child who was on the register and attending school, because we care.
Let me
Okay,
ask one
we got to
question.
go.
How much money is going to be spent sending, not just ministers who like to shake hands and look like a demigod handing out envelopes, but sending the people who are doing the work to all the corners of the country, rather than doing this through a transparent, predictable, existing NIS system where if you got a school-age child, you're entitled to go every quarter and collect your check.
Timothy, we have to have you and Kian Jabu, who's in the studio here, the organizing secretary. We have to have you and him again. And we will have both of you when the parliamentarian is selected. It was nice.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was. I hope you remember those philosophers.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say a great thanks to Mr. Timothy Jonas, chairman of ANOG, and he has raised some very important issues as to procurement and obviously concerns over the distribution, cash grants, and so on. And of course, as responsible people, we are going to be inviting the persons who are in charge of that so they could be able to bring some clarity or give explanations as to what exactly is happening here. We're talking billions and billions of dollars. And of course, we're going to, again, every time we do when we close.
We need to announce Chawandas Prasad is our guest on Wednesday.
You decided that?
Chawandas is our
Okay. All right. We have to have a chat after this on that. All right.
Chawandas is our guest on Wednesday. For those of you who are looking here, Chawandas,
I'm just kidding him.
forget
That's
about
my friend.
Gildarie and his assassinity. Chawandas is our guest on Wednesday.
I can't help it but be serious, but please remain safe on our roadways until we see you again. Save a life, save a vehicle, save money. Have a pleasant rest of the evening.